This podcast is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the business psychos and does not reflect the viewpoints of their current or former employers or clients. Thank you.
It's the business psychos, and today we're gonna talk it out. The podcast about what execs shouldn't talk about. Connecting executives and those who aspire. We're here to have a conversation, yeah, we're gonna light the fire. It's the business psychos. Yeah. The business psychos.
Hi, Katie.
Hi, Mary.
How are you?
I am doing pretty good.
You sent me one of your non-cat memes that you sent me.
Not a lot of them.
I don't know if you remember. It said, "Let's normalize working for money," which I was awesome. It's hilarious. Yeah. And it got me thinking about our show and the strong audience reaction that we've received. Like, we continue to get lovely, great, amazing feedback. We're being invited on other shows. We're being asked to speak at corporate events. But we're also picking up on feedback which suggests we're doing something almost dangerous here. And I think the clue's in our tagline. We talk about what execs shouldn't talk about. So this got me wondering about why some people find some of the things we talk about here taboo.
We've had audience emails from people who report feeling scared to publicly like the show. Looking back on the nearly 20 episodes we've done so far, I can't recall an episode that was not safe for work. We are not anti-corporate, and we don't encourage or condone unscrupulous behavior.
Yeah, I mean, my initial reaction was that maybe people are scared that if they publicly like the show, which talks about professional realities in a direct way, it might tarnish them as being negative or even disgruntled. There's almost a paranoia with some folks that if you're identified as someone who's aware of the game construct, it might hurt you in that game in some way. And I can imagine this is especially true if you're in a toxic culture.
Agreed. Yeah, we discuss aspects of the game which ruin the work fantasy that many people hold on to tightly. And this is ubiquitous in the professional world, by the way. There's complicity between employers and employees to interact within the more palatable fantasy world cultivated by corporate marketers. However, the reality is companies are about profitability. That's it. It isn't personal. And playing your career accordingly will better serve your mental health and ultimately your advancement. Employees are mostly disempowered in this scheme. The one where you give it your all and surrender your entire identity to the company. And should you lose your value, you'll be terminated. This is blunt and it's uncomfortable to hear. It's dehumanizing and scary as heck because it reminds us that our economic stability can hang in such a tenuous position much of the time. And, despite our efforts, we have little control over this.
Wow, here we go, jumping right in. Yes, raising into consciousness uncomfortable truths. It's understandable then why this might strike a nerve and stir up a whole bunch of feelings. And I think this is why a fan wrote to us and said he had to stop listening in order to emotionally cope with his job. So today we're talking about why uncomfortable truths about work can feel threatening. So let's start the conversation. Hang tight, psychos. We'll be right back.
Part of the game we discuss on the show involves theatrical doublespeak, taglines like hustle culture and even people are number one priority that tend to be pretty performative, aspirational at their best, and deceptive at their worst. There's plenty of theater about being a so-called, air quotes, winner and giving everything you've got. But in people who become overly absorbed in a company, as they identify themselves and start to care too much, this can mean getting too tied up in identifying organizational flaws or getting too involved in interpersonal politics. There's often kind of a emotional dysregulation that ultimately works against people that move into actually enacting this narrative. So let's face it, caring about something that is essentially inanimate, company, the right way to do this is a skill. There's a very specific kind of dispassionate engagement that will take you far. Like veer even slightly to the right or the left of this and you miss the mark and even put a target on your back. So story time here. In tech growth companies, there's a pattern of promoting high-performing individual contributors into management roles without offering them training or development, and then watching them battle the ensuing traumas of being positioned to lose after having been a high-achieving individual, highly respected member of the company, to a floundering new manager. Not the topic for this show, but part of the exposition for what we're talking about today. So where's this going? There was a period of time I was asked as an advisor to come into a few companies to develop emerging leaders. Disclosure, I wasn't great or even good at this because, as you'll see, my core message never got through. I'll give one example. There was this mid-30s father of two, I'll call him Jack, not his real name, who had made a massive impact on the company as an individual contributor. They promoted him to run a team of 15 people. Some of them had previously been his peers, and everyone was suffering. They called him the Kool-Aid Man because he was both cult level obsessed with the company and also how he handled his inexperience was making him disruptive. Like the 80s commercial where the Kool-Aid pitcher burst through the wall. He knew about the name and he even liked it. Like he'd be like, oh yeah, like he'd joke referencing to the Kool-Aid Man breaking through walls. And so like all companies, there were a lot of problems. And in his fervor and enthusiastic, like passion for the company, every issue became a hill he was willing to die on. There was a joke that he had the company logo tattooed over his heart. He'd say things like, I can't stand back and not get involved. And this company is too important and what we are doing matters. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. Everything he pointed out was a real problem. But he was becoming a pariah in the organization. I kept telling him, calm down and focus on the factors within your control. Stop taking this personally. Remember what I said about being bad at this function? Okay. Well, a few months after my engagement with this particular company, when it ended, I found out that he'd been fired. And the CEO told me, it just wasn't a fit. A lot of issues with, air quotes were used, his enthusiasm becoming too much. And so I had a coffee with Jack. And when we met, he panicked. And he said, I feel betrayed. I was the Kool-Aid Man for the company and look what they did to me. And of course I had to remind him that the origin of the expression of drink the Kool-Aid, is like Jonestown. Like it's it's really fatal. Fortunately not in his case. I mean, but the moral of the story is that companies will claim to want qualities like passion without being specific enough to provide meaningful guidance on how to demonstrate them. So when in doubt, think dispassionate engagement. And, let's talk about it. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, my first job was working at Wendy's Hamburgers in Keene, New Hampshire for $3.75 an hour. And when they hired me, I was like, I can't believe a major company is going to let me represent them. It's like, I'm so pumped up. I remember my first day over 30 years ago, I sat in a little converted supply cabinet watching a bunch of training VHS tapes. I still remember white, red, and green, the stacking for building sandwiches, which is mayo, ketchup, pickle, and then onion, tomato, lettuce. I felt like I was getting away with a heist getting paid to watch those videos. Like, then as I, worked in the sandwich line in the drive-through, I felt like any second where I wasn't providing value was theft. And if I'm being honest, I still kind of work like this. I love building things. I love doing things. But let's talk about when this becomes problematic. If you let work absorb too much of your overall identity and don't diversify your sense of purpose with relationships and pursuits outside of work, and when we work out of fear, which can lead to panicked, intense behavior, fear that we'll be found incompetent, note people who actually are incompetent don't give a shit, fear that without a job we'll perish, we can lose ourselves, and that can be really scary. You can love your job without drinking the Kool-Aid.
That is hilarious. And I was trying to write down the white, red, and yellow. What is that? Because that sounds like the right order.
It's white, red, and green.
White, red, and
green.
So
it's like mayonnaise, ketchup, pickle.
But then also onion, tomato, lettuce. Okay.
And it was like a rock song. In the way that they literally taught it.
You may have disclosed some confidential corporate IP right here. This is like the Mrs. Fields cookie recipe right here, everybody. Wendy's. You get a cease and desist from Wendy's after this episode. That what I was struck by as you're talking, and I can definitely identify, but it's almost like the opposite, or that's like, or whatever, you're overcompensating in your fear of the tenuousness of your employment, of the reality of your role in whatever company, and that's going to vary. Maybe you are the CEO, maybe you're the founder, or whatever. But like in reality, I think people like this guy you're describing, like they're abating those anxieties, right, by making it and them so much bigger. Like it's almost like the size of that may be proportionate to those fears. Like, and that's why you see people kind of like take on these roles. Like it's not like the act like the job you want. It's like, hey Luke, how you doing? He agrees that it's just it feels sadder. And I think those people, it's interesting where there's a whole bunch of those people, or there's few of those people, the dynamics of the culture. Like it's interesting that the CEO himself kind of bumped this guy out. Like he was so disconnected from reality that even the CEO of the company that he was so identified with was like, this isn't good. But he was so blinded he couldn't even see it himself.
Exactly. And I think it goes back to the doublespeak, which is these kind of taglines that are touted without a lot of explicit definition and even clarity about the fact there's aspects of them that are actually patently untrue, which is that, being overly passionate is not going to work in your favor. And that a lot of what we talk about in the show is about like understanding the organizational dynamics and playing the politics effectively.
But that could very much challenge your own narrative, and like then start to really then the foundation starts to crumble, right? When you start like taking bricks out of that, like everything starts to get a little shaky.
Well, and you think about the fact that I was paid to try to instill this message on this person and was completely ineffective in my ability to do it. Because I think a big part of it that I didn't mention is that he had attributed his ascension to his passion. So he had felt like his sort of like maniacal, relentless pursuit of, driving the business forward was what had contributed to his success as an individual contributor, which was absolutely true to an extent. But, like we've talked about, I think in episode 1, even to go all the way back, is like what got you here won't get you there. And that kind of like lack, it's like when you're just sort of like running a play, but then once you're kind of more having to be the coach and like think about like how individuals work together, and that you're not the star player. Like there's also some of those types of things that are happening that are not effectively, I think coached and adjusted to, like with an organization supporting people's ascension. But especially in tech companies, there's like a huge issue with that.
And we'll be right back. Hey, psychos! Ready to ditch those harsh chemicals and make a real impact on our planet? Alcove's got you covered. Introducing Alcove, your new go-to for eco-friendly cleaning products that actually get the job done. From foaming dish soap to refillable hand soap, each product is crafted to be sustainable, effective. Here's the scoop. Stasia Yefimenko, founder of Alcove, embarked on this mission after years of dealing with allergies and asthma. She wanted a better way to clean, one that kicks out toxic chemicals and single-use plastics, all while keeping your space sparkling. So why not switch to Alcove? Head over to alcove.co and check out their stellar range of products. It's time to make a cleaner, greener choice. Try Alcove today. Your space and the planet will thank you. Use coupon code PSYCHOS15 to get 15% off your first order. That's ELCOVE.co. Over-identification with work is not only something I've experienced in my career, but it's almost like it's foundational to it. So it's like similar to what you were saying, Katie. And I think it even started with college for me. I applied to 7 schools, but I had my heart set on one, which was NYU. I had this fantasy of being a writer, living in the Village in New York City. That's where I wanted to be. Sitting in cafes where people like Burroughs and Mailer and Baldwin frequented. And so I went there and even ended up working at NYU on the same block as Edgar Allan Poe's apartment, which is pretty cool. I should mention, though, that this school was not a realistic choice. And everyone warned me of this. But I painted my teenage room purple, wore NYU clothing, and I applied anyway. And even once in, as a student, no one could tell me a negative thing about the school. I was broke. I had to move out of the dorms and live in a basement studio in Queens where I subsisted on no-name brand macaroni and cheese from CVS. I think it was something like $6 for $1. It tasted so terrible I could only eat it with heaps of ketchup, and it turned this like nasty orange. And but anyway, this is not to piss on NYU, by the way. I still love the school to this day. Does the school love me? Did it ever? Of course not. NYU is a business, and a large and very successful one at that. My romantic notions of college were not realized, but I still, even to this day, allow myself to hold on to this romantic feeling. There's a benign dissonance to it, but a dissonance nonetheless. Over the years, I've come to understand the emotional grasping that comes with over-identification and the need to belong. I can admit to myself that I sometimes allow feelings to override my logical mind. I've worn corporate swag as proudly as I did my university sweats. Most of the companies and clients I have worked for or consulted with are well-known brands. Through association, I felt special. They chose me, so I must be valued and valuable. But water bottles, coffee mugs, and mouse pads don't equate to a work contract. And as we've discussed in previous episodes, work isn't family. If you put people or companies on too high of a pedestal, it makes for a more disorienting fall. Marketing and employee engagement are part of the game, and I don't say this with derision. I appreciate free water bottles and backpacks, but I'm careful not to fall into the trap of allowing myself to buy into a false narrative about the reality of the situation. The danger in allowing yourself to be blinded by marketing and your own fears is that it short circuits your critical thinking, which is necessary for sound evaluation of situations. This helps you to act more intentionally, making choices which support your better interests. It's great to love your company and also to love being at home and time for dinner with the family. It's fun to go out with your boss and colleagues after work for free drinks and also put your phone on Do Not Disturb on the weekends. It's important to divorce your emotional representation of the logo next to your LinkedIn profile from your ability to evaluate what is in your best interests. We all have to do what we have to do to get up in the morning. Sadly, most people do not do jobs which make them spring out of bed, and that's okay. But if your dissociative measures are too drastic, you numb yourself from certain realities, which can actually harm you. If the stress of your job is impacting your physical or emotional health, that's a wake-up call, a big red flag that you must investigate honestly. And what all of this means for me is the criticality of honesty. Honesty with yourself, about your situation and your professional options. It can feel easier to not look at difficult truths. I get it. And in these stressful times, none of us need more worries to carry around. Here's the thing, though. At least the honest route gives you the power to make informed decisions on your behalf. Living in fantasy will trick you into blissful ignorance, which could really result in unpleasant surprises down the road. To win the game, you need to first recognize that there is one, then learn about it and yourself. If this process results in you no longer being able to tolerate where you're at, then your intelligence has done its job.
Woo. You did it again. Look, I'm responding to a lot of your insightful thoughts, but for me, the really like overriding thing is appreciation for you, and just a shout out to your perseverance, like and just how awesome that demonstration is. And I know we're talking about, sort of this like double-edged sword of like, like really giving it your all. But I mean, also, I think there's just the example of looking at, first of all, these origins of you like going to a school that was considered outside of your reach, and then keeping yourself in it through some of the most difficult conditions as far as like needing to, eat. Who knows what that macaroni and cheese actually was. Like, I mean, it's probably still nutritional debt in there. But I don't know, it like one of the things that like was kind of like, I couldn't think of the exact term for it, but I have this cup that's like, take faith in how far you've come and consider that evidence of how far you're going to go. And I just think that as a sort of shout out for anyone, who works with you as an advisor, I don't know that like there's a lot of stuff that we don't discuss on the show in terms of your background, because you've done some very national and global scope, massive things. And I think that those things which we don't discuss, combined with the context of like how far you've come to get there to be able to do that stuff, is pretty incredible. But yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you're amazing. And, and I'll say that, on the note of like professional swag and company identification, I have this one vignette that I'll never forget, which is I'd been working with a company. I helped grow it. It was my first company that I helped grow. And I was so absorbed in it for 4 years. Like, we went public, all this kind of stuff. Great, and it was a great run. But I was so absorbed in it, I had no context about what the company was relative to the rest of the world. This memory of being on a plane, and the gentleman next to me and we started talking, and he said, "Oh, and where do you work?" And I told him the name of the company, and he said, "What's that?" All of a sudden, such a like wake up call for me. I'll never forget it. And it was, it was like really a formative experience for me to remember that it's like, look, this over identification, it's so easy to do, but the, popping the balloon of, with reality, it can be pretty sobering. And depending on how much you've given up, it can be pretty upsetting.
Woo! This is heavy stuff. I'm going to grab a coffee. Hang tight. We'll be right back.
One of my favorite quotes I say on the show is, do what you have to do until you can afford to do what you want to do. But how can you do this if you don't know the difference between the two? Being happy is an active process. If you are passive and lack discernment, your life will serve the interests of others. In this way, life isn't fair, nor is it easy, but it's a hell of a lot harder if you don't know the rules. It's important to ask questions. There are written rules, of course. These are the obvious ones: how to perform well at your job, how to navigate difficult situations and challenging personalities. But most likely, your boss will outline these things for you, and they'll be the basis for a lot of just your kind of standard annual performance evaluation stuff. But there's also unwritten rules, cultural norms, unspoken realities like the ones we talk about on the show. Business Psychos is about discussing these aspects of our lives. We do this because it will help you be successful so that you can give yourself the life that makes you happy by casting light on these things that aren't comfortable to talk about. We will be better placed to succeed professionally while also taking emotional care of ourselves so that we can have healthy professional lives too. I would prefer a reality where employers and employees can be open, honest in their dialogue about employment. I wish that more companies understood the levers to pull to create healthier and more equitable cultures. I'd be happy to see a world where competence and integrity were non-negotiable qualifiers for senior management roles. I think employees would prefer honesty and transparency with their employers, over being lied to and disappointed. But this is unlikely to happen anytime soon. So here we are. Don't get me wrong. Work is still work, and doing anything because you have to do it will always feel like different than doing things you want to. But when you play the game with a wider view, not taking things so personally, and doing the inner work to know your value, how work feels will change. Shifting your mindset and making professional decisions based on reality will always benefit you in the long run. Even if initially it doesn't feel great to face depressing facts. Like, my recommendation is to figure out what you're good at, equally important, what you are not good at, and own it without hesitation. Seek out roles that fit your strengths. Trying to square peg, round hole yourself into a bad fit has a compounding negative impact on your self-worth. I'm talking specifically to executives. Don't hide your weaknesses. Own them and hire people who are both better than you and good at stuff you don't know how to do well. Like, side note, have people in your professional network to consult with on your weak areas. Hey, maybe you're lucky and you love your job. You love your job so much you couldn't imagine doing anything else. But more likely, there are other things you dream of doing, things that inspire you and make you happy, but aren't things that earn a living. Then your job is to figure out how to build a plan to use your capital to create a life where you can spend more time doing what you love. This plan could include how to optimize your earning potential so you can have more time to enjoy life later on. This plan will continue to evolve over time, and there will be unexpected turns along the way, which may drastic changes. What's important is that you have this plan and remember that your current job is a means to a bigger, more personal end. I used to have a note on my computer, and every time I saw someone doing something amazing that quite frankly broke my heart because of the time I felt like I was buried under the weight of the world with my job, I would write it down. So, surf in Africa, cycle in Croatia, yoga in India, massage school in Thailand, live in Bali. And you know what? I did all those things. But when I was living in Bali, one day, after my morning yoga class, I was having breakfast in a gorgeous restaurant and watching the servers. And I could sense that I missed some of the very specific aspects of contribution and satisfaction that work brings. So I happily went back to working and incorporating what I'd learned about myself to find a better fit in a company I joined. As previously mentioned, I like working and I like doing other stuff. So, have a place that incorporates perspective that will help you emotionally frame up your role as just one piece of the bigger puzzle of your life. This knowledge will help you cope when you feel unhappy about your situation, it will remind you that you are in control of your destiny and that better days are to come.
And we'll be right back. In 1999, I took a vacation day to watch The Matrix in the best theater I could find in New Jersey. Watching that movie felt like a religious experience to me then. I wanted out of the Matrix. Where was my red pill? The next day I returned to my office, sat at my desk, and worked on a looming deadline. Gone was the energy from the day before, and things returned to how they had been before I saw the movie. What happened? Imagine if your company were to send out a broadcast email to everyone at 9 a.m. In it, they remind everyone that the U.S. is a hire, fire at will country, and that irrespective of your hard work, they reserve the right to downsize employees at any time they feel appropriate. They'd close the email with a reminder that bonuses and compensation increases were unlikely this year, and that promotion is more likely to be directly tied to political connections than to experience or expertise. Want to guess how the sentiment in your office changes after everyone reads this email? What will be the implications for productivity and innovation? What level of commitment would you expect employees to invest in making the company better or rooting out and addressing risks? Think about the impact to the quality of products, services, how customers might experience employees they interact with after this email. This example lays bare the obvious reasons why employers don't want uncomfortable truths to be transparent. Doing so would curb the kinds of behaviors they depend on for success. The more intriguing question is whether employees want to confront these truths. And I was thinking about it, and I'm kind of surmising that folks probably fall into three buckets here. And the first are those who, they see everything with clear eyes. Either they've had the experience of being laid off or discriminated against or reorged, or maybe some of the folks in this group are from Gen Z, most of whom don't buy into this fantasy of work like some people from previous generations. But there's another group of people who have a big mortgage and college to pay for. Maybe they have special needs children or aging parents that need health care. Or they're still paying down debt accrued after a work hiatus. Maybe some folks in this bucket have just accepted a new role in a company which seems really cool. I mean, come on, the last thing in the world you want to be reminded of is the precariousness of it all. If it's just too much, you just might want to enjoy it for a while, to drink a little of that Kool-Aid. And I'm guessing if you're in this camp, some of the things that we talk about on this show might just seem a little too much. And that's totally okay, because you're doing what you have to do, and I have a ton of respect for it. And then the final group to mention are the ones who kind of fall between the first two groups. Yeah, they know there's a game, and they maybe carry some scars to prove it. They have serious earthly responsibilities, but they're starting to also understand that their spirit and health are precious, and that our time on this earth is more limited than we can comprehend. If you're in this group, the topics we discuss on this show can be highly conflicting. The tension doesn't feel good, but something kind of compels you to listen anyway. You're coming into your own and trusting your strengths, believing in yourself and your ability to get through anything. You aren't ready to retire, nor are you willing to settle. You're learning the game and putting all your chips on you. So back to The Matrix, there's a great line in the movie where Cypher, played by the great Joe Pantoliano, says, I know this steak doesn't exist. I know that when I put it in my mouth, the Matrix is telling my brain that it is juicy and delicious. After 9 years, you know what I realize? Ignorance is bliss. And as great of a scene as this is, I think I disagree. And I'd counter that with a quote from Carl Jung, which goes, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Thanks for tuning in. Did you find this episode interesting? Please take a moment to rate and review us on YouTube or your podcast platform of choice. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but ensures you never miss an episode. Plus, your support helps us reach more listeners and bring you even more great content. Oh, and don't keep the good stuff to yourself. Share the love by sending this episode to the folks in your life who might benefit from it. We love building our community and would be thrilled to have them join us. Can't get enough Business Psychos? Get news, behind-the-scenes content, and random commentary, not to mention pictures of Katie's cat, by following us on Instagram and Facebook at Business Psychos Pod. Thanks again for listening. I can see the sun in your face. I can see the summer in your face.
The sun in my face. The sun competing with the ring light.
Yeah, no, but you got good color. Like you've been out in the.
Oh yeah,
yeah, good.
Yeah, actually,
glow.
I was outside this weekend. Got a little on my arms too, which I'm very proud of.
By the time this airs, we're going to be into September. So I'm getting right now is the end of September and end of August that we're filming this. I am getting every ounce of sun beam that I possibly
you're
can.
A golden goddess.
Like I'm a dermatologist's nightmare. Like people say that, and then I'm getting a lot of shaming comments about it. Like, I'm not getting sun, so I don't get wrinkly and stuff. And I'm like, you know what? We all got to go. We all got to die somehow. And if mine is being wrinkly and getting too much sun, so be it. I'm happy with that.
Hello, dermatologists. They're really riding side saddle with you to be able to support you with all sorts of therapies. You win. Well, Mary wins. Golden goddess for the W.
Yeah, someone's going to find this video 20 years from now and be like, see, right before you could see all the sun marks and anything. But anyway, you know what? I'm feeling happy today and I don't regret it. I'm going to say that now.
No regrets. Yeah.
Katie,
I used to go to the sunbeds. I used to go to the tanning beds
too.
And so often that I go to the 30-minute ones, like 30 minutes.
Those are the old school ones.
I don't think they want to let you do that anymore.
Yeah, they don't.
And I would go every day. And I remember the woman who worked at the tanning place was like greeted me with disdain because she was like, "This is just way too much."
She's like, "Who do I have to call? Where's your emergency contact information so I can call your trusted other, get you out of here?"
Oh, I just remember she just treated me just like steerage. You know, she just perp walked me back to the bed. Like there wasn't any sense of like, wow, what a great customer. So yeah, I don't know why she cared. I mean, come on now.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine who I see every once in a while, and every time I see him, he's like, whoa, you're like, it's like just adjusting. Hold on. Okay.
You look great.
Anyway, I'm from New Jersey, so you know, it's just a thing.
Hot girl summer. You're out there doing it. Thank you for showing up and putting the effort in to be beautiful every day.
My stepdaughter is like, she's gorgeous. She has like porcelain white skin. She's English, so she's like, you know, very, very fair. She's got beautiful red hair, and she's like, she takes care of her skin like a wealthy heiress, like an 80-year-old wealthy heiress. She's got like hats and creams, and she has a ritual in the morning and at night, and SPF 100, and then another hat, and I'm like, you know, out there with like my oil. But anyway,
it's pretty aristocratic, you know. I mean, that was like one of the things that was like the mark of the working class, right? Mm-hmm. Was that you had like your skin was cast with the sun.
See, speaking of the working class,
yeah,
little segue there.
Today.
It's the best I could do.